it's Leigh. I'm at SoCo. I'm going to be doing a swing coat sew along for you today. This is the last pattern in our capsule collection for 2022, so we're super excited about that, to get it out with the extended sizing and everything. I am going to use a single needle industrial machine and as well as an industrial 3-thread serger today for all the seam finishing. Yeah, let's get going. I'm going to use this really beautiful yarn dyed linen for Johnny's coat today. You could say that you could go with a lot of different threads on this. I ended up going with a navy blue because it seems to be the most prominent color for me. So here's all of our pieces laid out. We have 2 fronts, 2 backs, the facings, 4 pockets, your sleeves, and collars and undercollars. We also have interfacing cut here, and today we're going to show you a really nice way to clean finish your interfacing against your facings. So that'll be really nice. Tools needed are a good pair of scissors, a bone folder or point turner, snips, seam ripper, pins, marking pins, rulers. Here's the buttons. I chose a nice wooden button, and then some clips or pins, whichever you prefer. The collar and undercollar, we're just going to interface like normal. So I use a pressing cloth here. You press until they're firmly attached here. I check it and make sure it's all attached. And once they are, then you're ready to go with those. For the other facings, however, we're going to do a little differently. We are going to go ahead and sew these seams right there at the shoulders. And then we will do the same thing with the interfacing, but they'll be done separately. So you need to make sure with the interfacing that, you're checking your sides. You want to do the right sides to the right sides. And then at the machine, you will go ahead and sew all of those shoulder seams. Be using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance everywhere on this pattern. So when you get to the interfacing, it is a little widgy. This is a tricot that I'm using. You might use something a little heavier weight. This is a light to mid-weight tricot, so it has some stretch. So it's a little tricky sewing this on the machine. It's going to want to pull on the ends. And what I do after I finish sewing this, I just give it a little stretch with my fingers. You can see this is kind of what I'm doing here, and kind of press those seams open with my fingers. Once we get back to the iron, we're just going to press the seams open on the facings. And then we're going to pin, matching all of our seams and any notches that we might have on the pattern. We will match all those and we'll pin this in place. I am pinning here because this interfacing is pretty widgy and I just don't want it sliding around on me while I'm at the machine. So I'm going to place pins all the way down this. And then we will go over to the machine and we're going to use a little bit smaller seam allowance here. This is the one place we'll use more like a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you're going to go all the way around that farthest edge of the facings. These are right sides together right now. So as you're sewing, the sticky or glue side of the interfacing is facing up towards your hands. Back at the iron, you are going to press just that seam allowance open. So you can see I'm just using the point of my iron to get in there and press that seam allowance to the other side of the fabric. The seam allowance of the interfacing now is getting glued to the fabric. And then once you have that, then you fold back the complete interfacing and you're just going to attach it to the facing. And you're going to see this is going to be your finished edge of your facing, and it's really going to be nice once you get this all sewn on your garment. You just kind of have to take your time here and match up those seams, make sure everything's matching as you're going, and just make sure it's firmly attached all the way down the facing. Next, we are going to work on the body of the garment. These are our backs, and I am spending some time matching up this pattern. Every time you have a plaid or a stripe or something you need to match, I am going to use some pins. You can see I'm working my way down and matching those before I get to the machine. And even once I get on the machine, I'm also going to be checking. While I'm over at the machines, I'm also going to go ahead and clean finish these pockets. So first, this center back seam, again, 3/8 inch of a seam allowance. These are right sides together, and I'm going to take my time here. The center back seam is really a seam that you will notice, and if the pattern's not matched, it's really going to bother you. So just take some time. I'm matching up the plaid and hopefully it's going to turn out all right. I checked it as I went, and then I went ahead and serged it. While I'm at the serger, I'm going to go ahead and clean finish all of these pocket edges. So there's 4 pieces of pockets, and then I'll give them a quick press as well when I come back to the iron. And to make those nice and flat, sometimes a single layer of a serge can have a little ruffle to it. Pressing the back now, the back seam. Pretty good pattern matching there, I gotta say. And now we're gonna start to pin on those pockets. So that's why I wanted to have them prepped and ready to go. We are pinning these at notches. So you have notches on your pocket and notches on the sides of the garments. So I'll work on both the back sides of the garment and the right sides of the garment, and I'm pinning the pockets right there at the notches on all 4 pieces. And then we will come to the machine and sew this all the way down the complete pocket at 3/8 inch seam allowance. And we'll do this to all 4. So once you get those pockets sewn on, we're going to go ahead and clean finish all of our side panels. So you'll do 2 on the back and 1 on each front piece, and you can see around that curve. You just work around that curve there where you have that section where we will be adding a slit. We will now press these nice and flat, and we're going to prep this so that we can do a nice edge stitching along that pocket. Before that, I'm going to go ahead and remark these notches. We will do this edge stitching between the notches, and I just want to make sure that I can still see that. Sometimes that definitely gets lost in the stitching and the serging. This edge stitch is pretty close. It's about 1/8 of an inch. You're going to do this on all 4 pockets. Now we are going to lay the front against the back pieces, right sides together, and we're going to start positioning this, pinning this in place. Again, I have a pattern to match here, so that's going to be my #1 priority. You will see as I'm sewing these pockets, it's a little bit off as far as my seam allowance goes, and that was due to the cutting. You know, sometimes that can happen. In a coat like this, it's not crazy fitted. I have a little bit of wiggle room, so I really wanted to match that pattern, so that was my priority. So if you notice that it's a little off, if the pocket's a little off in some places, that's why. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin here towards the middle of the pocket as well at the side seam where the opening's going to be. I want to match that seam up because I will be stitching in that area in just a minute. I went ahead and pinned the rest of the pocket as well. Somehow it's not in that section of the video, but I did pin the rest of that pocket and down towards the slit of the hem. So we'll start right here under the underarm and work our way down this little section of the side seam. Again, right sides together and matching that pattern, moving pins as I need to. And when I get to this pocket, I will stop at that notch. You can see I'm pointing to it with my fingers. I will stop at that notch, do a little back tack, make sure I'm not hitting that seam allowance, and then I'll clip my threads. And in just a second, you will see me push all that seam allowance, including on the bottom. Didn't show it in the video, but I had my hand under there and checked it and moved it to the back. And now we continue around the pocket edge. We will go down until we hit the bottom of that seam. And we will do the same thing down here. So we'll push all of that seam allowance away from you as you're sewing. Back tack. And then push it the opposite direction. And here we'll actually come up to that notch where you notched and where you stopped your edge stitching. and you will stitch down and continue stitching down the side seam. Now, this is a place where you just want to be careful to not catch that seam allowance right there. So I put my hand in there and make sure those are lined up really nicely right there. This is one of the tricky spots on the pocket, but once you get this technique, it makes a really nice clean pocket. You just have to get used to filling with your fingers and making sure you're not hitting anything. I'm going to stop at this mark. It was on the pattern. I transferred it over. There's a dot there. That's going to end up being our side slit. So you can see this is kind of what this pocket looks like when you're done. It's really nice. I went ahead and did the other one, and then I came to the table and going to press these seams open. And at this point, we're going to go all the way around the hem, and we are going to do a 3/8 inch turn back. So I'm using the iron, I'm pressing using my fingers all the way around. So this is completely around the hem. Here you can say I'm working on the back. And again, this 3/8 is coming up towards the wrong side of your garment. And in just a second, you will see why. This is our mitered corner. And so what we're going to do, we're going to pin all 4 mitered corners. We're going to match those up, and then we'll go sew them at the machine. And we are going to go ahead and stitch down this 3/8 inch turn under. And so when we go to do this hem, it's already clean finished. It's really nice. After clipping those points, you can use a point turner to turn all of those beautiful miters out, and then you can do the rest of your pressing of your hem, which is a full inch here pressed up along the bottom. So we'll do this little bit, and then we will actually press up into that slit area, and then down the other side, around the back, and up the other side. So you are pressing this right now, but we are not going to sew this yet. We're going to work on our necklines and collars first. So we are going to sew these shoulder seams together, right sides together, and as well as the under collar here. And then these will get clean finished as well at the serger after we do these shoulder seams. This is our undercollar, and we won't need to serge these as they won't be seen, so we can just press these open. Next, we're going to give all these seams we just sewed a nice press. And once we've got the undercollar press, we're going to attach this to the body of the garment. These are right sides together, matching notches. There is a notch here at the beginning of your collar that you match up to the notch on the front of the garment. And then we'll do a stitch here. While we're here, we're going to go ahead and match the top collar as well to the facings in the same way. Now you can see here, there's the notch. Sorry, I didn't point it out too clear there, but I will later on. And that's where we're going to start and stop. So you won't go all the way to the end of that collar. We're going to leave that open. And then we're just going to work our way around this corner. We've matched up all the other notches. You know, the center back goes to the notch. And just sew this with 3/8 inch. Now we are going to clip out some triangles around both of those turns. You can see this is going to make it just press out really nice. Here's that notch that you couldn't see as well on the first one. This again, we're moving on here to the facings, and I'm attaching the top collar to the front facing. Again, back tacking at where the notch starts. There, you can see it a little bit better. And working all the way around the collar to do the same thing on the other end. And after sewing this, we will also clip some triangles out of this section as well. This is going to give us a really nice curve there. At the iron, we will press both of these open. And now we're going to match up the facing to the body of the garment, and we will start at the corners and pin. We will pin all the notches, matching all the way down to the ends. And here you can see I'm going to actually start sewing at this corner point. So I'm pointing out there, I will push all of that seam allowance back away from the direction I'm sewing. Try not to catch any of those seam allowances. And we will sew the collar here. So I will go to the corner, I will pivot, and then continue around the collar, doing the same thing on the other end. And I will actually continue down the body on the other side. So push all of that seam allowance away so you do not hit it. Come to that point where you sewed originally and stopped. And now, there you go, you can see. And now you're going to push all that seam allowance away from you again. There you go, as you start stitching here. So do not catch any of that seam allowance. This is what's going to make it really nice in that corner. It's going to make a really crisp corner. You want to get rid of all the bulk there, so that's why we're not catching anything. And then we'll just continue down the front of the garment. And here at the bottom hem, you will see I'm going to stop 3/8 inch from the bottom, and I will pivot. And then I actually will meet up with my fold line with my stitches. And you'll see when we flip this, it makes a really nice clean finish hem there at your facing. Now we just have to go back, and we'll start at the bottom hem on the other side. So you can see I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of the garment. And then we'll travel back up the front to meet up where we originally started on that corner point. Once you get back to this point, you just want to make sure that you don't hit any of your seam allowance. So again, I'm pushing it away from me so that I don't hit any of that. And then once we've got this done, then we've done all the stitching around the facings, and we need to clip all these corners. So we have quite a few corners that we need to clip, you know, all of those collar points. And then I am going to clip the points in the hems as well. Once all those are clipped, we will press all of this facing open first along the seam and then towards the inside of the garment. Right here, I make sure this is open. This is going to help get a nice crisp edge along that collar. I use my fingers, you know, any place like this to do a kind of roll and to make sure everything's nice and flat. I also want to press that curved seam on that collar to the under collar and make sure those are lined up. We are going to give a little stitch there. And so the pressing that really nice really helps here. And again, down the other side of the facing. You can see here, I'm going to put a few pins here to hold this in place. And then I'm going to go ahead and mark my hem as well. We're finishing up all of the facing and stitching and hems and things right now, so we're going to do it all in one go. The next thing we're going to do is sew these seam allowances together around your facing where it connects to your body. So you can see here, I did my notches a little deep, so I'm actually going to start mine once the notches start. So that might depend on yours, how you did your notches. You might be able to do all of that section as well. And I'm just putting a few pins here so I can stitch these together. Now again, you're just catching the seam allowances. So I'm working within my seam allowance of 3/8 inch. I was about at 1/4 inch stitching those together. And I just worked all the way around those edges. And then the next thing we'll do, which just keeps it nice and secure there so it's not going to flop up. And then I did an additional tag on my shoulder seams. And I went ahead and did my back seam as well, which you'll see in just a second, just to keep the facing from flipping up. It really annoys me when a facing flips up. So there you go. Now again, on these shoulder tags, you are still only catching the seam allowance there. You're not going through the outside of the fabric. So you'll see a little tack on the inside of the garment on your facing, but you won't see anything on the outside because you've just caught the seam allowances. We're going to move straight into sewing this hem. So we are going to sew around the bottom, that 1 inch hem, and we will pivot at the corners of those miters. And then again, we were going to pivot with those lines that we just drew in as a guide for a nice point of these side slits. These slits are really nice here. They're quite long, which gives you a really nice kick to this dress. Kind of flares out a little bit, a slight A-line there. And these miters on this hem are just lovely. This fabric was, had quite a bit of movement to it. So it did take some time with that pressing. A good press that will save you so much time in the sewing. So when I got to the sewing on this hem, it went pretty quickly. You can see I don't even have pins because the press held everything pretty nice. And then when we get around to the front, we just keep going and then a back tack and we're done with the hem. Final press on that all the way around. Next, we're going to move to the sleeves, and before we attach them, we're going to go ahead and press this hem up so it will be easy to sew this in. So we do exactly like we did on the body. We do that 3/8 inch, and then a full inch turn up. We're just pressing this in. Again, you want to make sure you're using the right side of your garments. With a fabric like this, it can be tricky because the sides are very similar, so just make sure you're paying attention to your notches and that you're pressing this hem towards the wrong side of your fabric. We'll fold these right sides together and go ahead and stitch these long seams under the arm. You will unfold this as you sew this. You'll still have that press in, so when you go to sew that hem, it'll be really easy to fold that back up. Do the same thing to the other sleeve, and then we will go serge these edges. Before we attach the sleeves, we will sew in that hem now. So now I've turned it right side out and I work kind of, around the inside of that circle. On industrial machines, we don't have any kind of free arm. So you kind of have to figure out how to get around small things like this. And so working inside of that sleeve actually is the easiest way to do it. Give a nice press here. And then we're going to start pinning this. Again, you know, you want to pay special attention to your notches. Make sure your sleeve is going in the right direction. You're going to match up the shoulder seams, the shoulder seam with the shoulder notch, and the front notch with the front of the garment. You'll notice we're not doing any kind of gathering stitches or anything here. This is a pretty close sleeve. There's not really a lot of easing in to do here. There might be a slight bit around the cap. I had to ease mine in a little bit, especially in a fabric like this, a linen, but it's pretty nice fit on this sleeve. I worked all the way around that on the first one, and now I'll do the second sleeve. And then we will serge these as well. These seams are getting serged together. So next you're going to get to see Z use their buttonholer to set these at SoCo. We will have a skills library very soon. It's a goal we have very early in the year. Buttonholes will definitely be in that skills library on a home machine. But if you guys, well, you must be sewing machine nerds like the rest of us here at Open Studio. So we love showing you our SoCo machines, and it's just amazing how fast and nice these buttonholes are. So there you go. Thank you, Z. I'm so sorry, somehow I deleted sewing on the buttons. I did have that filmed, but you know, I hand stitched on the buttons, and then here's a nice little view of the garment. It's a beautiful coat, beautiful fabric. It's great for spring, fall, layering. I hope you guys love this coat. I think it looks really cute. Here's Z trying it out. Thanks, you guys. It's SoCo today, and I'm going to sew up the swing coat that is part of our oh my god, this is at the end.
This is like Captain Morgan rum.
I do.
All right, are you ready?
Okay.